Look, all I'm saying is, if I'm trapped in some dark underground network of tunnels in a literal pit, and the only options available to me are either A, have my skull bashed against the wall by some monstrously strong woman, or B, allow that same woman to nurse me using a noticeably filthy bottle, I'm going to look her dead in the eyes and say, got milk? I'm Brandon O. This is Terrorific, and we're chopping up Barbarian. Welcome back to the place where it's perpetually spooky season. Let me just start off by saying my bad for going MIA for the past, 4 or 5 weeks since episode 13. Life has just been crazy, bro. We moved into a new house and I just did not have the bandwidth to juggle this podcast along with all that shit. But we're on the other side of it now, so we are back. And let's get into it. Barbarian was written and directed by Zach Kreger. And I think the strength of the film lies in his awareness of the audience and our expectations. And by understanding what we expect, he was able to subvert those expectations. I don't think there are very many people who accurately could have predicted the way that the plot of the film was going to unfold. Now, this was my first rewatch of Barbarian. The first time that I watched it, I went into it with no understanding or knowledge of what the film was even about. I didn't watch any trailers, didn't read any articles. All I heard through various, social media posts and whatnot was that it was just a wild ass ride. And because of that, I wasn't focused on any of the messaging that the film was trying to convey. I just wanted to see what the wild shit was about. And so I just watched it for what it was on its surface. And one of the things that I like most about this film is that even if you watch it through that kind of shallow viewpoint, it's still hella entertaining. It's still got all the qualities of a great horror movie, even without taking into consideration its message. Barbarian at its core is a film about societal gender dynamics. It's a film about sexism, misogyny. It's a film about how some men, whether outwardly or subtly, can make women feel threatened and uncomfortable. It's a film about how some men perpetrate violence against women. So let's analyze some of the scenes and characters in the film and how they tie into the overarching theme of some of the dangers that women face in society. So let's start with our first two characters, Tess, played by Georgina Campbell, and Keith, played by Bill Skarsgård. Now the film opens up with Tess arriving to this Airbnb. The neighborhood is run down, dilapidated, it's the middle of the night, and it's pouring rain outside. So she scrambles up out of her car, goes up to the porch, tries to get into the lockbox. The key is gone, but she sees that there's a light on inside and some movement in there. So she rings the doorbell to see who the fuck is in her Airbnb, and that's when Keith opens the door. Now, this marks the first notable instance of Kreger demonstrating his understanding of the audience's expectations. Bill Skarsgård, he is fresh off his turn as Pennywise in the two It films. And so once we see him, we automatically assume that he is some kind of menacing serial killer type of character. It's the middle of the night, it's dark, he just has a face that looks both disarming and alarming at the same time. So they start conversing about the situation, they're both confused about what's going on. Keith invites Tess inside to get out of the rain and they can talk about it more, and it turns out they double booked the Airbnb. At this point, we can see the unease on Tess's face. It's a random guy. She's by herself in the middle of the night. Of course, she's wary of what's going to happen. But what's interesting is that she then proceeds to ask Keith to use the bathroom, and he says, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem. It's back there to the left," or whatever he says. Again, they have double booked this Airbnb. They both have an equal right to this space. They both have invested some amount of dollars into accessing this facility. And yet Tess still feels a need to seek permission from Keith to use the bathroom, and more importantly, Keith feels like he's in a position to grant said permission. So we start to see these gender dynamics start to come into play. And then Keith starts throwing out red flag after red flag after red flag. Now he comes across as this good guy. He offers Tess a cup of tea. She says no. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to make you one anyway. Which on the surface may seem like he's just trying to be a polite person. But really, it seems to me like he's discounting or disregarding Tess's stated wishes and desires and saying like, no, trust me, I know what's best for you. Tess tries to call a hotel. I emphasize a hotel, one single hotel, to see if they have any space. Keith tells her, it's going to be tough. There's some kind of convention in town. And sure enough, the hotel clerk confirms that they have no rooms available. But rather than continuing to call other hotels, they are in the city of Detroit, a very large metropolitan area, which I'm sure has tons of other available hotel rooms that one mysterious, unnamed, unknown convention couldn't possibly book every single available room for. Tess, for some reason, still takes Keith at his word and believes him, and was like, okay, well, if that one hotel was booked, I guess the convention is taking everything up. And she doesn't call anybody else. So maybe Tess kind of fucked up there. But anyway, she stays at the house. She goes to take a shower. And as she exits the shower, she comes back to the kitchen and Keith is sitting there with a bottle of wine. The bottle of wine has been left in the house by the host for the guests to enjoy. And Keith demonstrates a very high level of self-awareness, as well as awareness of Tess's feelings and society in general, as he gives this little speech about really wanting to drink the bottle of wine, but he wanted to wait until Tess was out of the shower to open it because he wanted her to see him open it so that she would know for a fact that he did not tamper with the wine at all, because he remembers that her tea that he made for her that she said she did not want was surprisingly untouched. If you have to spell it out to someone that your behavior is intended to not cause any red flags, that in itself is a massive red flag. Tess should have been gotten the fuck out of there, son. But I guess a 20-minute movie wouldn't have been very enjoyable. But as they continue their conversation, they find some common ground. Tess is in Detroit to interview for a job to work on a documentary that's like focused on some underground music kind of scene or whatever. And Keith is a founding member, coincidentally, of one of these underground music groups. So they're like, oh shit, that's awesome. And now Tess relaxes. She completely lets her guard down. She's drinking the bottle of wine with Keith. They're out here talking about past relationships and all this other shit. And now this whole thing that started off so ominous, so menacing, has morphed into essentially a meet cute. We have a romantic moment going on now. And as they continue their conversation about relationships, Tess says that her ex-boyfriend is a guy who thinks love and control are the same thing, and that she's the girl who, quote, let herself become some kind of pet or something. Talk about foreshadowing for what lies ahead. But also, she drops a line that was very relevant to society at that time and continues to be so today. She says that, quote, guys get to blast their way through life making messes and girls have to be careful, end quote. Now, Barbarian was released in 2022. On June 24th, 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. So we have women's reproductive rights being assaulted in real life. And in this movie, now we have a double entendre referring to guys blasting their way through life, aka shooting up the club, going in raw, skeet, 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 and leaving women to deal with the fallout or the aftermath of that reckless decision. The next day, Tess is exploring down in the basement, finds the hidden door that leads to the network of secret tunnels in the house and throughout the neighborhood. And she sees some shit that's just pretty fucked up as she walks in there, which I would never do that personally. If I see like a dark ass fucking tunnel in an Airbnb, bro, like there is absolutely no reason to venture down into this fucking abyss. But Tess, I guess, is braver than me, because onward she goes and she finds a room that has a dirty ass bed, a dirty ass bucket, and there's a camera on a tripod set up next to it. And plus, the icing on the cake, there's a bloody handprint on the wall. It's very clear that there has been some kind of crime that has been committed here. At least one crime. And finally, the warning bells that have been ringing in Tessa's head for the past 24 hours, she finally listens to them. And as Keith comes back to the crib, she's like, yo, there's some fucked up shit downstairs. We need to leave now. But Keith, in all of his good guy, nice guy foundation, when push comes to shove, he's like, nah, fuck that. I don't believe you, son. I gotta go see it with my own eyes. Just because you tell me what you saw, that's not enough for me. Because women be crazy. That was the implication. And Tess is like, okay, fine. If you want to go, be my guest, motherfucker. But I'm getting out of here. So she tries to leave. This dude blocks her path. He moves in front of her, will not allow her to leave. He's like, nah, please, just like stay here until I can go see it for myself. I just want to check it out and then we can leave together. And so he goes downstairs and he don't come back up. So she goes down there looking for him, makes her way back into the room with the bed and the tripod. For some reason, she looks underneath the bed as if he would be playing like hide and seek down there. Like, oh shit, there's no Keith, huh? Where else could he be? But she makes the decision to descend further into this dungeon, which doing so for someone you've known for less than 24 hours is completely unhinged behavior. But Tess finds Keith in the tunnel and she tries to take him to the exit, which is back the way she came. But he's like, no, let's go this way. He insists that they go deeper into the tunnel, despite Tess telling him where the exit is because she just came from that direction. But you know how men gotta be when it comes to navigation. Women don't know a goddamn thing about navigating. So he's like, nah, trust me, come this way. And lo and behold, that's when our primary antagonist shows up. The mother, in all of her monstrous glory, grabs Keith's dome and smashes that shit against the wall. And we get a grisly shot of what's left of his face, this bloody fucking pulpy mess. And to me, that symbolized that beneath the nice guy exterior, Keith still turned out to be, at the very minimum, sexist as fuck. One of my favorite moments in the film is when Keith has just had his head bashed in and Tess is staring at the mother face to face, this super aggressive, monstrous looking creature. We don't know she's a woman at that point. And there's such a sharp cut directly to AJ, played by Justin Long, driving down the sunny highway in his convertible, singing along to some boppy song, just having a grand old time. You have this juxtaposition of this dude just in his own world, completely oblivious to the struggles that a woman is going through. But then he's forced to reckon with how his actions have impacted at least one woman when his production team calls him and tells him that his co-star has levied a sexual assault allegation against him. Best part is, once he's freaking out and shit, they hit him with that infamous, calm down, you need to relax. It's poetic. But AJ takes no responsibility for his actions that led to the accusation. He instead calls the victim things like a fucking bitch. Notably, he utters these words while he's on the phone with his mother. And at first she tries to lightly rebuke him, but then eventually she relents and takes his side. And this scene seems to say so much without saying much at all. I think it symbolizes two things. One, the defense mechanism that some women employ of just simply going along with what the man says instead of rocking the boat and opening themselves up to further abuse, whether that's physical or emotional. Or two, that some women, especially women who are mothers of sons, play a role in perpetuating this cycle of misogyny by either fostering misogyny themselves within their sons or not actively trying to stomp it out whenever they first see the warning signs. Misogyny is not exclusive to men. If there's anything that 2 of the last 3 US presidential elections have told us, it's that there are some women who hate other women just as much, if not more, than some men do. But AJ turns out to be the owner of the Airbnb that Tess and Keith are at, and he has to travel to Detroit in order to sell it to help pay for his legal defense for the allegations that have been levied against him. Now, while he's out in Detroit, he meets up with one of his boys. They're at a bar, they've been drinking, and he tells his friend, like, yeah, we fucked. She just took some convincing is all. That's a direct quote. He then goes on to say something along the lines of, she said no at first, but then she came around because, quote, I'm a persistent dude. So it's heavily implied that there's a lot of truth to these allegations. Later on, as AJ is continuing to prep the house for sale, he's trying to take some measurements so he can accurately list the square footage, and he asks his realtor or property manager if the basement can be counted as extra space. They tell him no, but you can list it like on an addendum or some shit like that. So he goes down into the basement with his tape measure and sees that the door to the secret hidden door has been propped open because Tess went down there, and he's like, okay, that's weird, but I'm just here to get my measurements. So he continues taking his measurements down the hall, and he comes to the room with the bed and the camera. Doesn't even bat an eye, even though it's very clear that this is some fucked up shit. All he cares about still is taking the measurements of the room. It's insane. But AJ continues his descent down into the tunnels trying to get his measurements and sees some weird shit down there, some cages, a breastfeeding tutorial video playing on loop, and it's weird, and he's starting to get a little concerned at this point. He ends up stumbling into the pit where Tess is being held captive, and then the mother shows up, throws a little grate on top of the pit to seal them in there, and slowly lowers an absolutely filthy baby bottle into the cage, trying to get them to nurse from it. Now, Tess knows the drill, and at this point, Tess is a real one. She's like, yo, she just wants you to be her baby. Drink that shit before you make her mad. And Tess leads by example, and she suckles on this little baby bottle nipple. Have no idea what liquid is in there, but it can't be enjoyable. And AJ understands this, and he's like, nah, son. I don't even care if I make her mad. I don't even care if I die. I am not doing that shit. And so she snatches him up. Takes him back to the room where the tutorial of the breastfeeding video was playing, and she forces him to breastfeed. And so now we have this image of AJ having something forced into his body and being subjected to the exact same abuse that he has inflicted upon at least one other person. He's forced to sit in this feeling of helplessness, this feeling of powerlessness, and maybe, just maybe, a small portion of him begins to understand and accept the feeling that his co-star experienced because of his actions. Now, AJ ends up escaping from this breastfeeding session because the mother tries to chase down Tess after she made a break for it once AJ got snatched up. And AJ ventures deeper into this tunnel system, and he comes upon a door. And as he approaches this door, he hears the mother start to come up the tunnel behind him, so he turns to face her with the super threatening phone flashlight that he has in his hand. But the mother does not come any closer. It's very clear that she's terrified, petrified by whatever lies beyond this door. And as AJ walks through the door and enters the room, he sees a man who is bedridden in a filthy room. I mean, that room had to just smell like ass. I cannot even imagine what that shit smelled like. Oh my God. But anyway, this woman who is like 7 feet tall, strong as fuck, is somehow or for some reason terrified of this small, withered man. And we come to find out why. This man is Frank, the most barbaric of all the barbarians in the film. He was the original homeowner and spent decades abducting and abusing women, forcing them to bear his children, and then having children with those children over and over and over again until eventually we got the deformed, monstrous version that is the mother. He's a real piece of shit, and he's lying in a bed covered in literal shit. And yet AJ is compassionate towards Frank. He treats him like an actual human being. Can you imagine that? He says to him, "Man, you scared the shit out of me, man. Are you okay?" He brings him water. And AJ's body language is just completely relaxed. He feels safe with this dude. Safe with the dude who's the biggest monster of them all. And the way that he treats him really stands out because if you contrast that with the language he uses towards the mother, he only refers to her as it. He's like shocked when Tess uses the word she or the pronoun she. But immediately he recognized Frank's humanity. He empathized with Frank. He felt like Frank was someone he could relate to. And he says to Frank, quote, "That fucking thing is gonna pay for what it did." He still refuses to acknowledge the humanity of the mother. And as the film jumps back to Tess after she's escaped the house, she makes her way to a gas station, finds some cops there, and is like, "Yo, I have been held prisoner." I mean, she's smeared with dirt, she looks grimy as fuck, and she's trying to get them to go back to the house. And they're like, nah, they're like completely dismissive of her. They think she's like on drugs or some shit. And they only agree to go to the house once she says that there is a man's life in danger. But once they get to the house, they revert back to being completely dismissive. They don't even go inside. She tries to go inside and they won't even allow her. She points out the window to the basement that she broke to escape through. And they're like, "The only crime we see here is you breaking a window." And they just drive off and leave while she's begging for help. This woman's pleas, literal pleas, are falling on deaf ears because these people do not care what a woman is saying. And then the film cuts back to AJ as he has discovered Frank's collection of videotapes of himself recording what we can only assume are his assaults. So AJ pops one of the videos in. We don't see the video, thank God, but we hear a woman or a girl just like screaming, and AJ cuts the video off real quick. He's clearly shocked and disgusted. At this point, realization starts to kind of dawn on him. He sees some of the parallels between his actions with his coworker and Frank's actions with countless numbers of women, and he wants to distance himself from that. Frank is the Charizard to AJ's Charmeleon. You know, he's not quite as bad, but AJ is clearly on the path of becoming someone or something like Frank. And this shakes AJ to his core, to the point that he starts to take accountability for his actions. Whenever he accidentally shoots Tess, he owns it. Someone assumes that the mother wounded Tess, and AJ says, "No, I did that." And he has this epiphany. And he kind of links it through this kind of speech or whatever to his own sexual assault case that's ongoing. And he realizes that he's hurt people. But this moment of self-awareness does not last long at all, because Barbarian continues this theme of showing us that when push comes to shove, people tend to revert back to their base instincts, their true character. And so as the film progresses, the third act progresses towards its conclusion, AJ literally throws Tess off of a water tower, presumably to her death, in an attempt to escape himself. But at her core, the mother is a caretaker, and so without any hesitation, she flings herself off the water tower after Tess catches her, breaks her fall, allowing Tess to survive. And because the mother is this superhuman, basically, she also survives. But AJ does not know that. He just knows that Tess has survived and somehow finds a way to blame the entire thing on her. He's like, I had no choice. I didn't even really let you go. Like, you started to slip. like, I didn't shove you off the water tower. You slipped and fell off the water tower yourself. Absolutely insane. And what a piece of shit. But then the mother pops up, grabs AJ's head, rips it in half, and he's toast. As a result, he drops the gun that he had taken from Frank. Tess picks it up and slowly raises it to the temple of the mother, who does not resist one bit. Screen goes black, we hear a gunshot, and then the credits roll. Now, I think this ending scene symbolizes a few things. One, the clash between modern feminism, Tess, and the traditional housewife role, the mother. The thinking or the notion that a woman's only role is to bear children and be the homemaker, that is viewed as archaic by some. And now we see Tess literally trying to kill that whole notion. And I'm not saying that either side is right or wrong, but to take it a step further into more, I guess, cynical territory, I kind of interpreted this ending scene as a statement that gender equality is a zero-sum game. That in order for some women to get ahead, they must step on the back of other women and push them further down. That there's only a limited number of spots available that men in power are willing to elevate a woman into. And so it becomes this bloodbath, and this is a literal illustration of that. But regardless of how you interpret that ending scene, I think the overall message of Barbarian is that we as a society need to do better by women, period. Whether that's out in the streets, at home, in the workplace, or as it relates to healthcare and women's reproductive rights and body autonomy, we just have to do better. And that's a wrap on Barbarian. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and follow on IG and YouTube. Those handles are the same, at Terrorific Podcast. Like, subscribe, rate, comment on those platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. And continue to tap in with season 2. We'll continue our horrible host and haunted house guest theme. But in the meantime, remember, always keep it spooky.